Hi. As Ken says, I'm Hugh Fordham. I'm the CEO at Hollaroo. I want to talk about candidate experience. Ken says, it's a big subject. It's been talked about for a while. I'd say it's been talked about for a long time, and I guess what I'm trying to convey today is I think the point has come where we actually need to do something about it rather than actually just talk about it. I'm going to try and do what Ken says, which is look at it at the strategic level, but then try and be practical at the end of it and give you some tips and some things you can actually do to make a difference in your organisations. First point is I only have one shirt. I'm good at lots of things, but fashion sense is not one of them. Experienced is another word for old. I have been working in HR technology for more than 20 years now, and before that I worked for Schlumberger, which is a big oil service company, for about 11 years before that, so you can start to work out that I'm fairly ancient by now. But I hope that shows that I've got this big, long track record of seeing trends in technology, trends in recruitment and talent acquisition. I've also worked for lots of small companies, so after I left Schlumberger, which is 100,000 people, I started off working in a company called World Careers Network, and then went to a company called iGrasp. Andy hired me a long time ago. So I've been in huge organisations, small organisations, and the last point is that my last role at Schlumberger was I headed up their recruitment in the UK. So I think I've seen recruitment and talent acquisition from both a business perspective, but also from a supplier perspective. And all of that, I think, gives me quite a unique perspective on this area, and allows me to look at the issues that we face from lots of different directions and come up with some good solutions. So candidate experience. Really important. These are some quotes from a Future of Recruitment roundtable where there were some heads of resourcing, HR directors from big old organisations. And these quotes, and I'm sure you'll be going to other events over the year, and you'll hear lots of very similar things. So the first one is about remember that your candidates could also be your customers or your clients. So if you give them a poor candidate experience, that could directly impact on their relationship to you as a customer. The second one is about remember that the people who are touching on you in the recruitment space, most of them are going to have a negative experience because most people aren't hired. So when you're thinking about candidate experience, you have to think about everybody who's engaging with you, and not just the people you're hiring. And the final point is absolutely candidate experience should be at the core of any recruitment strategy. Now, I haven't put in the names of the people, I haven't put the names of the organisations, because that was in October 2010. So 10 years ago, we were talking about this, and if I'm perfectly honest, I think we're probably having exactly the same conversation now. And so the question is, why? Why have we been talking about it? Why have we been feeling that it's important? And why haven't we done anything about it? And my take on it is, I think if you look at the last 10 years, in fact, pretty much since 2008, whenever you've gone back to an organisation and asked for investment in a particular area, and you've got a choice between something that will make the candidate experience nicer and something that will make it cheaper or make your recruitment team do more with less, the decisions always come down on the cost side. So can we automate things? Can we load our resources with more requisitions to manage? That's been the driver for the last 10 years. I think potentially now it's changing, and it almost feels to me like a perfect storm, where the three areas coming through, which is demographics, politics, and expectations, all coming to head all at the same time, and that's tilting the balance back to actually investment in candidate experience can really start to deliver business benefits to the organisation. So to talk about those three things one by one. Demographics has been coming for a long time. for those who don't know, basically this is the population of the UK split by age. In the old days, it used to be a pyramid, so you used to have lots and lots of young people coming in and not so many old people. This is where it's predicted to be in 2030, and it looks like sort of a slightly wonky tower where you've got a smaller set of younger people supporting a rather larger number of older people. And the implications of that, and like I say, this has been coming for a long, long time, are things like, right now, 30% of the UK workforce are over 50. And I looked at the numbers between the UK population in 2020, which is now, and then in 10 years' time. The overall population is going to go up by about 3 million people. The number of people between 20 and 60 is going to go down by 1 million. So those are the challenges that are coming through to organisations. Like I say, this has been coming for a long time. So you kind of wonder, well, what have organisations been doing? And the answer is organisations, and I think going online. And when I first started with iGross, the big thing was if you could bring your talent acquisition online, suddenly your shop window was open to the world. But more specifically, in the UK, we've over the last 10 years benefited from saying, okay, we don't just have to recruit from the UK, we can recruit from the whole European Union. That's obviously changing. And though officially it's going to change at the end of this year, what everybody's aware of is the fact that ever since 2016, migration from the EU is falling off a cliff. So organisations that have built their whole talent acquisition model on fishing in a population of 500 million are starting to have to realise that actually now you're dealing with a population of 70 million, which is just in the UK. It's interesting. I mean, the balance, and you can see that businesses need people, so therefore the trend is recruitment or migration from outside the EU is going up in partially to compensate. It's not exactly right because those numbers tend to be students as well as workers, but from bitter experience, so from my days at Schlumberger, going through the whole process of getting somebody a work permit, justifying the fact that you're hiring somebody who's not a UK citizen, it just makes recruitment much more difficult. And so, I think we've addressed the demographic issue to a certain extent by fishing in a wider pool. I think that's going to become more difficult from now on. And so the two combined together, which are both happening at the same time, is one of the reasons why your target community is smaller than it has been and more challenging to find. And then the last bit is expectations. Now, this comes up quite a lot, and I'm slightly cynical. So people will talk about, young people these days. They're used to shopping really easily, going online, buying something from Amazon. So therefore, recruitment needs to be the same. I don't think it's quite as simple as that. I don't think anybody's really expecting that getting a job is going to be exactly the same as ordering something from Amazon. However, I have picked out a couple of pieces of research which is specifically around job seekers and the ways in which they're behaving is changing. The one on the left is a fantastic piece of work by PwC on the future of recruitment. I think it's really good, and anybody who hasn't found it, come and ask. I'll show you where to find it. But the stat I picked out is that nearly half of the people that they surveyed had turned down a job offer because of a poor recruiting experience. So think, you spent all that money getting somebody to the stage where you decided, yeah, I really want this person, and then they say no. That is becoming more and more common. And then the second one, somebody's accepted an offer and you think, oh, great, I can relax, I fill that role. Nearly a third of people now have turned down or withdrawn from a job offer after accepting it. So absolutely, your job is not done when somebody's accepted an offer. You need to keep that candidate experience going right up until the point where they join you. And I think what's quite interesting, the number one reason why somebody withdraws is that they've actually had a better offer from someone else. I always say the moment somebody's got a job offer from you, their value to your competitors goes through the roof because they already know you think they're a good person. So, these days, anybody who's got an offer from any organisation is suddenly much more valuable, much more targeted by other organisations. So again, you can't stop engaging with them. You can't stop working with them to bring them into your organisation. So I think those three things brought together mean that now the cost of a poor candidate experience is becoming so significant that you need to start thinking about investing in it. So your talent pool's shrinking in the UK. The ability to compensate for that by fishing in a wider pool is becoming more tricky, and candidates are more ready to walk if they're not pleased with the experience that they're getting. And that tips the balance towards candidate experience. And that number, so the average cost to a UK organisation of losing somebody before they start is £20,000. So it doesn't take much to go back to your organisation and say, here we go, this is what's happening, this is why we need to invest in this part of our business. So that's sort of the strategic part. That's why this topic is important. Now we get into practical things. What on earth can we do about this? I think one of the things I rather like about what's happening now, I mean, it's a horrendous experience for the country, but at last we appear to be listening to experts again, having gone through a whole period of we don't care about people who actually know what they're talking about. At Hollaroo, lots of what we do is driven by behavioural science, so nudge theory, behavioural economics, basically understanding what makes people do things and understanding how you can persuade people to do things and change their behaviour. This is Kurt Lewin, one of the founders of this area of psychology, and the concept that he brought up, which I think is quite interesting, is when you're thinking about changing somebody's behaviour, there's two ways you can do it. One is by giving them incentives and persuading them to do something, and the other way is taking away the things which are stopping them doing something. And the way he's talked about it is it's like in a car, you've got an accelerator and you've got a brake. And actually, when you start to work through it, it's much more effective to take your foot off the brake than to press on the accelerator. And there's no point in pressing on the accelerator if your foot's slammed on the brake at the same time. So I think that's a really interesting concept. I think we can now talk about how do we apply this into talent acquisition and recruitment. And one of the things at the masterclass is I'd like to explore this in a bit more depth and see if we can identify other accelerators and brakes in the interest. I've come up with a few. So on the accelerator side, on the incentive side, referral bounties. So one of our systems helps people do employee referrals, and the question I get asked all the time is, how much do we need to pay? If we pay more, will we get more referrals? Absolutely not. Cut the story short. It makes absolutely no difference how much reward you give, and there's zero correlation between the success of a referral program and how much organisations are paying for it. Making applications easy, so basically saying to people, just click a button and you'll be hired. I think people aren't stupid. They realise that applying for a job, is a complex process, and they're perfectly prepared to engage in that process if they feel as though they're going to be considered seriously. And then the last one is lots of spending on glossy messaging, lovely websites, videos and what have you. These are all examples of where people are looking at how do we push on the accelerator, how do we make things happen. But there are obstacles in the way. So if we link them all together, so if somebody's referring somebody and they get put into your standard job application process, and like 99% of the people it doesn't end particularly well, they have a poor experience, the first person they're going to tell is the person who referred them in. Is that person then going to refer anybody else in? Probably not. So if you treat your referred people badly, your referral program doesn't work. Second one's quite interesting. So given that the first point where somebody engages with an organisation is when they apply for a job, and 99% of the people who are applying for a job are going to be rejected, cumulatively that becomes a very, very negative experience, and you start to think, oh God, am I going to apply for this job? Because chances are I'm going to either get ignored or get a negative experience out of it. And then the final point was, absolutely Craig's point. There's no point in not being authentic in your messaging. There's no point in pretending your organisation is something that it isn't. And then the other point about authenticity is people these days, it's much more effective to have a message coming from a person rather than coming from an organisation. And I think especially young people these days, that anything that comes across as being inauthentic or just a bit too good to be true just doesn't really work. So taking those three obstacles and the sorts of things you can do. So this is a system for Network Rail supporting their employee referrals, and the whole idea behind it is when somebody makes a referral, rather than feed them into the job application process, instead you invite them into a space where you make them feel welcome, where you can learn more about them, they can learn more about the organisation, you're making them feel special, and it's much more relaxed because they haven't applied for a job yet, they're just learning a bit more. So after a couple of years, we surveyed the talent community in that space and said, has being part of this made you more positive about a career with Network Rail? 93% of them said yes. So just making people feel special, making them feel welcome has a huge impact on the talent. The second point about it is start to talk to them before they've applied for a job. Because if you think about it, if your first contact with them is somebody who's applied for a job and you're starting to talk to them, almost certainly that's going to be a negative experience. So what you're doing is you're saying, okay, you want to be this job with us, we're finding ways of saying no. Turn it round, if you can start that conversation with somebody before they've applied for a job, then the conversation is much more about, well, where would you fit? And where might you best fit within our organisation? So absolutely, you can learn more about the candidate. You can understand what they're interested in. I'm a big advocate of, if you've got some nice assessment tools, start to give those assessment tools to the candidates before they've applied for a job, because then the whole conversation is, we want to tell you where you should apply for, rather than we want to tell you, how bad you are for whatever job it is that you happen to apply. And that makes the whole experience for candidates, turns it on their heads, and it becomes a positive experience rather than a negative one. And if you do that, you can build some really good long relationships with candidates. So BDO have been one of our oldest clients. They've been using us for 8 years now. Last month, they hired somebody who was first introduced to them 7 years ago. So it's over 7 years, that person's been gaining more skills, more experience. They've been keeping in touch with BDO and understanding where BDO is going and what sorts of people that they're looking for. And after 7 years, finally the stars aligned and they get hard into role. I think that's a lovely story. I think it shows the power of just having a non-judgmental conversation with somebody, which can work over a long period of time. One of the things that I think is also great about that story is that all happened without any recruiter input. So basically it was all managed by the system. The system just sat there, kept this person engaged for a very long period of time, and then when the timing was right, brought them into the organisation. And then the last point, which is about authenticity and about making things more human. So this is a model we use for onboarding. So it's a pyramid of needs, a bit like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the whole point behind it is that yes, you need to get the basic stuff right. Yes, you need to make sure somebody's got a contract, make sure that they've got their laptop and their mobile phone when they first start. But once you've done that, you need to layer on it the more human side and the more value added and the more emotional side to the relationship. So telling people the sorts of things that they're going to need to know when they start. If they've got a question, giving them a space so they can ask people or get some help. And then the final tip of the pyramid is build it around people. So let people start to build, before they've even started, start to build the relationships with the people that they're going to be working with, so future colleagues. That makes them feel part of the family. It makes them feel as though they belong to the organisation. And because it's real people, that hits the authenticity nail on the head, so they're actually really understanding the sorts of people they're going to be working with. That has a huge impact. So we've been running onboarding for Capgemini for a few years now. So after a couple of years, they had reduced their post-offer attrition by 50%. Now, if you think back to the cost I had earlier about how much it costs when people don't start, that's been a huge saving for them. To be honest, with Capgemini, actually, what they really wanted is they wanted their people to be happy. So they survey candidate satisfaction, and that's up at 90% and what have you, and they wanted to have people ready to go more quickly. But the true business impact is if you can make sure all the people that you want to join your organisation actually join your organisation, that is much more effective for you. So hopefully that was useful. Tried to be strategic and practical at the same time. Well, I'm here all day. Anybody wants to talk about any of the things we do, love talking about it. And like I say, those PwC surveys and stuff, I can help with those as well. But thank you very much.
So we will share the content afterwards, and obviously those links to the PwC thing. So, I mean, one quick question, if I may. So what stops, because everyone gets this, so what stops organisations doing it?
I think certainly in the past, some of the issues have been putting a value on it. So I think, you talk to most recruiters aren't pleased that their candidates aren't having a good experience, and they want their candidates to have had a better experience. But if they're completely stretched, they're overloaded by the organisation, and they're struggling to get investment from the organisation, you can understand why things have gone the way we can. And what we've tried to do, I think now that we're applying a more data-driven approach to it, we're starting to get some numbers that people can take back to an organisation and say, look, absolutely, if you give your onboarders in the Capgemini example a great experience, that is the business benefit, so you can justify the investment much more.
Okay. Brilliant, thank you. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in not the next presentation, but the one after that. So, Hugh?